Hello and welcome back to JLXP. It is currently 7 p.m. on the Sunday after the first round of the LCS and the LEC playoffs. I'm going to have MarkZ on this episode to discuss what we just saw and also preview the matches that will be happening on Tuesday and Wednesday, actually. So a more unique time to watch future LCS games. But Mark, I've been talking to you all day. We were on Countdown. We were on Analyst Desk. We were on Bud Light League Lounge. That was actually
sick of you.
That was actually a lot of fun. And then, I was just like, hey, Mark, you want to come to a podcast too? And I promised you this sweet fast food deal that didn't actually work out for you.
But then it still worked out for you.
Yeah.
You sabotaged me.
Yeah, I sabotaged Mark's meal plans. I have told him the workaround for the meal plans later. But really, we should talk about... Let's work backwards throughout the weekend. So let's talk about the C900 Thieves, then we'll talk about FlyQuest EG, and then we'll touch a little bit on the LEC series, where we actually saw G2 get knocked down into the losers bracket, and then we'll end with some brief previews of the matches we'll see on Tuesday and Wednesday. But Mark, you were telling me just now, before we started, what are your thoughts on the LCS this weekend?
You guys ready for a great podcast? Here are my thoughts. I kind of didn't give a F about the two series this weekend on a personal level.
Why is that?
So
honesty is the best policy.
I've actually still been kind of working through it myself because it's the start of the playoffs. Everything's hype. But I think in some ways the format plays into it too, where I'm so sure that C9 was going to win that series. It felt like that one was just a guaranteed win for them. And yes, it's like there's always that chance for an upset, but I really didn't think it was going to happen. And then it's still fun to watch. Don't get me wrong, I was not bored watching these series, but my personal investment for some reason felt super low.
So I had a thought actually about, it was like a week and a half ago. I'm thinking, how am I going to make these LCS playoffs interesting? Because I was just thinking about the league. I'm like, holy crap, C9 is so much better than everyone else. It doesn't seem like anyone else has put it together. Is it really that compelling to figure out the second best team? But just so you know, as I was working through it, I started to get a little bit more excited about it. And I think some of that ended up coming across on the LCS playoffs teaser, which that was, I may as well tell a story. I'm really happy with how it turned out and how the production team did it. But basically they had this vision of the song they were going to use, and they had these drone shots of an empty LA, and they had the pitch of, let's make this kind of a recap of the main storylines of the season before getting into what's happening in week 9 and then eventually what we're going to be seeing. And then I just kind of monologued for 10 minutes, and one of the producers was listening in, and he asked me a few pointed questions afterwards because they had an image of what they were going to do. And then they just cut it together to make me sound better, which was really good job by them and a really cool tease. But anyway, the point that I settled on for how to make this interesting is I do still think it's cool that C9 kind of has to run the last leg of the race, and they really are this historically great team that you want to see if they can actually rank up there. And there's the added benefit that none of them have won an LCS split, where that is not true, not just for any other team in the playoffs, but any other team. Every other LCS team had an individual who has an LCS title, except for C9, which has been one of the cool things this split. But anyway, that was my little bit. Go more into yours, because you said there is still stuff to look forward to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I actually thought I was going to be really excited for the EG FlyQuest series, because I was excited to see if Solo could help change FlyQuest fortunes. And then they started Viper again. And it was the same kind of thing where they swapped Solo in initially. He was a little hot or cold. So I understand in week 9 where they were still doing some testing, but then the week 9 stuff happened. And it looked like he was much better. This is Solo looked much better. And then that series happened. They were really close to winning in game 2, kind of got away from them. And then it was actually a close series. So I was invested in the moment, but then leaving the series, all I could think of was, why isn't Solo starting from the beginning? And what does this series look like? It almost felt like I was robbed of the one interesting series this, and it was still, I'm saying, it was still close in the moment. I wasn't having these thoughts, but afterwards I'm like, man, I knew C9 was going to win. I thought EG was going to win, but I want to see if Solo could turn it around. But then they lost 2 games with Viper.
Yeah.
So like
the first game of the EG FlyQuest series, I thought FlyQuest had it.
Yeah.
And then they just threw at Baron. And that's when you think it's going to be an immediate sweep, and then they turn the tides with Solo. You and I, we got into this just a little bit towards the end. So the end conclusion I'm going to have is that I'm shocked if Solo doesn't start the next series. But how we got here, I can see why they started Viper. And I know it, I think it was Azale and Freak casting, and I think Freak was super, super pro Solo. You're pro Solo. I think so in the LCS, he started 4 games. He's looked quite good. He's been 2-2. I haven't dove in enough to the stats to know this for sure, but I do feel like they play a lot more strong side around Solo, and Viper is meant to be more of a weak side player. And I do wonder if they didn't think it would be worth it to try and play through top against Kumo, and instead we're hoping to focus either PoE or Turtles Lane against EG. Do you see any credence to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it looked like their game plan was very heavily focused on shutting down Jizuke. In the first 2 games, they had ganks going mid all the time, and they actually were pretty successful. They killed him a handful of times. They killed him a bunch, yeah. And Jizuke, he ended most games with a positive score, I think, but like I think in both 1 and 2, he was like 1-3-1 or something at some point in those games. So they were relatively effective. And to your point, if you want a top laner who's just going to sit up there and not really do much, and you can't do that with Solo, then I can understand starting Viper. But the problem I like, the thing that has bothered me about Viper all split long, and I kind of saw, I think I put him 9th on my rating was, or my tier list was, he has been so inconsistent in skirmishes and team fights where he will go in at the wrong time and just insta die as a frontliner. He'll miss critical abilities like his Camille game and stuff. And I don't know if, like I said, maybe they legitimately can't play around mid if Solo's in the game, but short of that, or short of some super bad attitude issues, which then I don't even know why he's getting in anyways. Like the difference in their execution in the mid to late game is really what bothers me. It's not even the laning phase. It's when I watch Solo team fight on set, he had some great set plays. When I watch the Renekton from Viper, I want to throw up. It's like it's so night and day in those situations, and those are the ones I'm thinking of where, like, in close series, you're kind of splitting hairs with those Baron situations and team fights, because those are pretty scrappy games, and those are ones where I'm like, oh, if you just had a slightly better execution or a little bit clearer decision making from your top laner, maybe you could have actually won a couple of those other skirmishes. And that's why, looking back on these series, I was like, God, like I just want to see. And one, no one gets eliminated either. So like, I can't be like, FlyQuest just threw their, their chances or whatever, because they will get this other chance. And same with some of this other stuff. So I'm really, really looking forward to the 2 games coming up. I'm super stoked about those. Yeah. These 2 were kind of like, nah.
Yeah. So I think the FlyQuest GG series was actually a lot closer than the feel that we came away from the series with. But I think the really long, like 32-minute pause, followed by yet another pause, followed by just a backdoor in the series being over, changed the feeling. It's like, oh yeah, it was a 3-1, whatever. Whereas really game 1 with a Baron throw, and then game 4 kind of being a momentum-based game where it felt like every pause, EG came back with more momentum, makes me think that, like, when I'm looking forward, I still think FlyQuest has a pretty solid chance of finding wins, especially against Golden Guardians, and maybe even in a rematch with somebody else. But right before we jump to the TSM and the Golden Guardian series is quickly on the C9 front. Yes, we know they were massive favorites, and yes, we all expected them to win. But I wanted to touch on the why did they pick 100 Thieves versus FlyQuest thing? Because I think sure, it's valid to bring up the point that 100 Thieves had a better second half of the split, but I imagine like 75% of fans were thinking like, wow, they must be messing with someone, or just like this is a baller move to pick the 3 seed over the 4 seed, when I think they kind of proved that, yeah, they actually just match up really well with 100 Thieves, and this was not some like foolhardy or overconfident decision, and I just kind of wanted to point that out.
It's one of those things too where, you're talking about like fractions of a percent, like, oh, they're 99% favorites to 95%, or, something like that. Because obviously those are a little extreme, but either way, they'd be massively favored in either series.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you can't really do any wrong.
Yeah.
And it was more just like, why? And the matchup thing is what they said. And I think everyone kind of knew what they were talking about once that Reaper quote came out, where it's like, we think our play style matches up. And it's like, we think Niski is going to smash Ryoma, or even not directly, but at least be able to have such a greater influence over that series. So I kind of got that. FlyQuest,
have one of the best mids in the league with Power of Evil.
Exactly. If Viper or Solo are playing well, then I think they're a little less attackable. And I think C9 is a little less used to playing explicitly around top lane to smash it. Whereas, Licorice for someday, he might win, or he might lose very gracefully. Either way, that's their best player that Licorice can probably neutralize mostly on his own. So I understand the thought process.
Yeah, and getting back into the way because this is a new playoff format for LCS, and I think the LEC format is different than this and even modified from the format that they used last year, but what's ended up happening is the old format gave a bye to the 1 and 2 seeds, 3 would play 6, 4 would play 5, and then the 1 seed would get to pick from the 2 opponents for the next round. What's kind of happened in this new system is the top 4 end up getting double elim, but if we actually just ignore, just imagine this, if we ignore what happened on Saturday, Sunday, the 1 and the 2 seeds have buys.
Yeah.
And then we have 4 versus 6 and 3 versus 5. So very close to the original round 1 of the playoffs starting now. So it's like we gave an opportunity for like a warm-up round, basically, for the top 4 seeds. And now the elimination playoffs kind of start. I know it's a little weird, and one is going to end up playing 2, but
that's what I was going to say is you get a better matchup early, better in air quotes.
Yeah.
Between 1 and 2 early. And then they also can lose that one and still run it back potentially if EG loses in winners finals. I'm not quite sure what terminology they have on the playoff bracket for all these, but what would traditionally be the winner final versus the grand final. You can lose the winner final now. The other thing, which Reaper also tweeted, which I kind of see his point that feels a little weird, is that the teams waiting in the losers brackets get to watch their opponents lose. So you get to see what they're picking, you get to see what they're playing, how they're playing, and what's working against them a little bit. Which is a weird advantage for a lower seed to have. I'm not sure it will matter, but
yeah, I can definitely see his point. I was trying to think through this as well in terms of if there was an easy fix for it, because I think there's already an inherent advantage in getting to lose a best of 5. Like the fact the lower bracket teams, sure, their quote edge is that they get to see the other team, but their disadvantage is they didn't get a second chance in a best of 5 if they do end up failing. And if you make them, because I think Reaper's suggestion was you make 5 and 6 play each other, and then they will play the winner of the 2 eventual losers. But
which is the EU bracket, basically.
Yeah, I almost feel like that's maybe even a bigger advantage for the 5 or 6 team, because it allows a 5th or a 6th seed to advance beyond where a 3rd or a 4th seed would advance, since this is probably a recipe for disaster talking about a bracket in an audio-only podcast, so I'll try and keep this short. But essentially the scenario that Reaper suggested would mean that FlyQuest would play 100 Thieves, and then TSM would play Golden Guardians, which I think would be more unfair to FlyQuest and 100 Thieves to have to play each other for the right to beat the 5th or the 6th seed.
Yeah.
I apologize in advance if I misrepresented what Rupert said or if my bracket wasn't clear, but I wanted to try and get that across.
Yeah. I mean, it's something where I don't know how much of an advantage or disadvantage it is, because I can understand if I was like FlyQuest or 100 Thieves, where you just kind of lose, and then you have to play again in 2 or 3 days, and you can't get that much practice in.
Yeah, I think it could end up being a really lame end to the year for 100 Thieves, because we can move on to 100 Thieves versus TSM right now, which would be the matchup on Wednesday. I mentioned during Bud Light League Lounge, like, I kind of hate TSM because of how inconsistent they are and how I still think they're favorites. And I also kind of hate 100 Thieves because you'll remember this. Remember Clutch in 2018 spring? There's always these teams for you or me where we never want to say they're good, and then they just keep winning regular season games, and you start getting these people tweeting you saying, why aren't you giving them any credit? I kind of feel that way about 100 Thieves, personally. Like, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I think I said they'd finish the split 8-10, and then they finished it 10-8, and I'm like, well, I was wrong about that. But, like, it's very real that they just get 3-0'd and then beaten by TSM and their season's over.
Yeah, I think that's totally possible. I would also say TSM's probably the favorite. And it's one of those things where you can't justify it super well, which is why it's so frustrating to be like, TSM's the favorite. It's like, why? Well, I think they're better. And it's like, well, how? And you're like, well, they have a worse record. They lost the last 3 games.
They lost 100 Thieves.
They lost 100 Thieves. They can only win on certain champions. They have, like, I mean, well, I don't want to blow all of our stats that we're going to be using in a countdown in a couple days, but TSM is really inconsistent. So it's hard to want to have a compelling case for them. But I think overall their players are better in most positions, except for maybe Someday. And Cody Sun versus Kabe's, but that was a little bit closer. And even then, Broken Blade is still what we would probably say is the 3rd best top laner in the league. So it's not like this horrible mismatch.
Yeah, on a good day, he can beat Someday.
Right. Unlike mid lane, which is like, ooh, we've seen Ryoma get slammed in lane by Bjergsen, so he'll have to really overperform in this series for them. And that's why I think they're the favorites. But there is always that other side of TSM that has shown up 9 times this year.
So I want to get into a topic that I think will be interesting about the difference in time between TSM wins and TSM losses. And
so we will use that one. That was one of the stats.
Mark, we don't need to save stuff between podcast and countdown. If you feel differently, I won't push you on it. But I feel like we can just.
I think it's better here because it's more. It's a pretty in-depth talk to have, I think, actually.
Yeah. So basically, TSM has about a 7.5-minute difference in victory time versus defeat time. So their average victory is actually pretty quick. It's like 32 or 33 minutes. And their average
3rd in the league.
Yeah, and their average defeat is 40 minutes. So in terms of CLG has a bigger difference between wins and losses, but that's partially due to sample size, and it's also the inverse where their wins are slow and their losses are fast. TSM has fast wins, slow losses. And normally when we have this stat, it's meant to make a team look good. Like, well, when they win, it's convincing. And when they lose, they're hanging around and they're really hard to close out. But I'm going to zoom in on the TSM loss to 100 Thieves in week 9, because that was a 43.5-minute loss, but that wasn't TSM hanging around before they got closed. That was TSM with a 9,000 gold lead at 33 minutes and then losing the game 10 minutes later. Talk about that, because I kind of know your opinion and I feel like I teed it up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. We have the same opinion as far as I can tell, which is that it's a stat, like you're saying, that can often be used favorably, but in this instance, we don't feel it that way at all. If you think about a lot of TSM's losses, and I think it's very important in League to, when you use the stat, you contextualize it in game first, rather than use this. Like, you can't let the stat lead you. You let your eyes lead you to the stat. And so when we were looking at this, on we have story meetings where we go over what we want to talk about. I'm like, man, I'm so convinced that there's something about TSM that makes them look so bad to me sometimes. And I can't quite figure out what it is. And our stats team gave us this stat about the 7-minute spread. And I'm like, perfect. That's exactly what it is. In their Immortals games, in their games versus 100 Thieves, the Pantheon Talia game, where they go on forever and they lose them. What's different is they're not hanging around, like you're saying, with a 10,000 gold lead that the enemy team just can't close them out on until they get Soul and Elder and Baron. They're the ones who are throwing these games or stalling out and like losing the ability to actually close them. And that's why that difference in win and loss time feels terrible in this instance, because if you guys don't remember those Immortals games, like go back and watch them. They're brutal to watch for someone expecting TSM to win.
Yeah.
And that's where that stat really feels bad, because they're TSM's second in goal difference at 15. This is arguably our second best early game team. So they should be still closing games out fast. Or if they were even a volatile team, like, hey, we make a lot of mistakes in the early game and then we kind of hang on. But that's not. They're very consistent in the early game.
Yeah. On one hand, this is why during Bud Light League Lounge I said I hated TSM, because I agree with what you said. But you also want to give them a little bit of credit for having such big gold leads in those 3 throws they had, one against Immortals, one against 100 Thieves, and one against FlyQuest. Those are their 3 big, giant gold leads that they ended up throwing away to lose the game. You think, well, if they just got a little bit better at macro, or you got a little bit better closing out games, then suddenly they're 12-6, right? Because they have one game that is the reverse, where they came back from a large deficit. It was about 6K at 30 minutes against EG in one of the earlier weeks. And I think that's the game where Dardox denied Dragon Soul with the Smite Steal, and then they started getting a bunch of picks with Rakan in the mid game, and they came back, I think. So they have like 3 throws and 1 comeback. And if you average that out, the eye test to me says that they are better than their record. Kind of. Because there's still going to be in the back of your head, if they get another gold lead against 100 Thieves, and 100 Thieves has one of these Trundle or Sejuani comps that they had so much success with when they're playing any team except for C9, that's where that series gets really interesting, because I think that's the direction we're going. I'll be quite surprised if we don't see TSM getting gold leads against 100 Thieves based off of lane difference or early jungle proactivity. But I bet you 100 Thieves will probably pick better scaling and try and exploit this TSM weakness,
Yeah, and it's very likely that like you're saying, they are able to do that. If they can close it out is another question. That's why we're so unsure what's going to happen. And then the other kind of elephant in the room is like, hey, they beat C9. They're the only one to do it. They looked really convincing when they did it. All of their wins, you can see the skill of this team. But there's that last little caveat of the draft, which has been talked about endlessly for this team all split long, and for good reason. Their win rates on their best champions are so much higher than like their second and third best, where it's like 5-0 Syndra, 6-0 Rakan, or whatever it is, 4-0 Set, and then like the next one is like not nearly as good. Yeah,
it's 3-1 Set, but 5-0 Syndra, 5-0 Rakan, 5-1 Xayah, because one time they mismatched the Xayah and the Rakan because I think Rakan was banned or something. Or no, it was taken away by the other team.
It was taken away,
Yeah. So TSM is your favorite? Reluctantly?
Yeah.
I kind of agree, and I keep thinking that TSM might be the biggest threat to C9 if they can even make it there. Because I don't have confidence that they can make it back to a C9 matchup, since essentially in order to make this road, they would have to not only beat 100 Thieves, but then
probably EG.
Yeah, it would definitely be a tough road to.
Is it 12? They play this team, the winner of the other series, and then they play the loser of the winner. So they would have to play 3 matches to make the finals.
Yeah, they have to beat 100 Thieves. They have to beat the winner of Fly GG. They have to then beat the loser of C9 EG, and then they would have to win the finals. You would have to win from this position. You have to win 4 best of 5s in a row to win it all. And
for an inconsistent team.
For the 2002 TSM, that doesn't seem very likely.
Yeah, it's so weird because I'm with you about like who's the most likely to beat C9? Probably TSM. How likely is TSM to see C9? Pretty low. I would say EG is favored versus TSM, but TSM would be more likely to beat C9, and I think it just comes down to like peak, not actually where they're at. Because I'm like, well, what's the ceiling on Kumo, and like, what's the ceiling on how well that team actually works together? We're still not, to be fair, exactly sure, because Jizuke looks fantastic when he's on, and same with Bang, and we've seen what the peak TSM looks like, where they're chain ganking top and diving and snowballing while bot, wins or loses gracefully or something, and we've seen peak TSM. I don't know if we've seen peak EG.
Yeah. EG's looked really good in times, but it's hard to imagine that world where they beat C9. That matchup will be happening on Saturday next week. So the matchup on Tuesday is FlyQuest versus Golden Guardians. And let's see if we're on the same page here. Who do you favor in this matchup, FlyQuest or Golden Guardians?
FlyQuest.
Okay, me too. Generally, I think it's because they played EG tight. I think they're still not necessarily that much worse than the team that was fighting for second, third, fourth for most of the split. And Golden Guardian had this 3-0 surge at the very end. I wouldn't be completely shocked if Golden Guardians wins it, because I think they're a team. I talked about TSM's gold graphs. Golden Guardians' gold graphs are very logical in the fact that if they're winning early, they generally close, and if they're losing early, they generally lose. With tiny variations, like there were small gold leads and gold deficits that were flipped. I wanted to talk about... I'll give you this one first, and if you don't want it, I'll just take it back. The celebration Golden Guardians had making playoffs. So like I'm happy. Like it's cool to celebrate. I'm so happy for Golden Glue and Golden Guardians for making it into playoffs, and it is energizing to make a run like that when you go from 6-10 into playoffs. Like that is awesome. But like I wonder if the level of their celebration means that like they don't actually have any other aspirations. Like, we did it, we're better than 4 other teams. Like,
I mean, so to be fair, there is a barrier to put between like, is this the team celebrating, or is this one guy with Adobe Premiere who's their social media intern?
Fair. All of these celebrations are social media based.
Yeah. So on the one hand, it's hard to judge, and I ultimately like teams firing shots back at us when we're wrong, and like kind of grandstanding a little bit on, oh, look at us.
Yeah, if people haven't seen it, they did a Golden Guardians are 10th place, because you and me and most people had Golden Guardians 10th, or
like 8th.
Like Immortals was the other team that was very frequently in 10th at the very start, but basically no one put them in playoffs. There's like a few people here or there that threw them in 6th as just like an edgy pick, which ended up happening. But yeah, for the most part, they're a last place team, and they're kind of making fun of that, which was a really well-made video.
Yeah, it was really funny. Everyone like kind of retweeted it and was like, this is how social media should be done. And like, I laughed, I retweeted it, I commented. It was funny. But it's also one of those things, like when you really stop and think about what they're celebrating, it's like such a minuscule accomplishment that honestly means nothing. Making playoffs is like, hey, good job, let's get back to work. It is not a like pop off. Except for maybe in the moment, like right when you you can explode out of your chair and be like, we did it. I'm sure those guys felt incredible ripping off 3 wins to make it into playoffs. I'm not saying any of that, but to like hang your hat on it is so funny as well when you consider that they were actually in 9th place for the majority of the season. If you go look at like Leaguepedia has like their placings at the end of each week, they were usually 9th, between 7th and 9th. And then like, I think this was only one of 2 weeks that they ended up in the playoff picture. So it's like for the vast majority of the split, you guys were really, really struggling. Great job on the rally. But like, if you just lose to FlyQuest, I am going to make fun of you guys so hard.
If they get ripped by FlyQuest, that's when the clapback comes. And I think if they beat FlyQuest, that's when the bigger victory lap happens. Because if we really think about a big picture, they are saying, like, they would basically be saying, we weren't the worst, we were just bottom half.
Yeah.
Like that's the comeback, and you're like, I don't know, guys. Maybe you should set your sights a little higher.
Yeah, it's one of those things too, where like we're all having fun with it. Like,
yeah.
No, they didn't do anything negative. They just like took one of our clips, and said, "Look how dumb they are," haha. But it was obviously in good fun. So like, what if they lose this series? It's going to be a fun clapback, obviously. But it's I am enjoying the social media interaction much more than I am with some other people. So
yeah, the important takeaway from this is, I think they should be happy about making playoffs, but it's going to be fun kind of regardless of what happens because of the unlikelihood of them even making it to this spot and the way that they have responded. So if they do make a run, like FlyQuest is a beatable team.
Yep, for sure.
Logically, with the way that they've been playing, like if Golden Glue can hold his own against PoE, FBI has been playing way better. We know Closer got voted as second team jungler, so he's been popping off a fair bit this whole year. And when the solo lanes don't have isolated deaths, the team actually performs pretty well. So this is one of those kind of, for me, a 60-40 series where I can see either team realistically making it out, but I have to favor FlyQuest.
Yeah, same. And I think the main reason I'm favoring FlyQuest is one of those firepower things that people always say. Mm-hmm. And like PoE in that loss to EG was fantastic. He was topping the damage charts. He was being aggressive in the early game on his Azir, coordinating with Santorin.
Yeah.
And I think if they have that same level of performance, I don't think, Golden Guardians will be able to hold on and turn things around like EG. Whereas when I look at all the members of EG, even Closer to an extent, they're pretty volatile. Huhi, mm-hmm. Golden Glue, FBI, Hanser, all of them have moments where they like looks like they're losing their mind. And the one thing you can say is in a best of 5 playoff series, PoE is probably not going to lose his mind and do something crazy and cost his team the game. And so that's one of the main reasons I'm actually favoring them. But mm-hmm. I think some of the stuff we were seeing in those last 3 games by Golden Guardians gives them a pretty good chance where they have interesting picks in the bot lane. They're playing really aggressive and snowballing, and those ISO deaths aren't happening.
Yep. So, and it happened. It'll continue on Tuesday, Wednesday. We've kind of given thoughts on that series. The big shocker of the weekend, as we transition over to LEC, was the Mad Lions beating G2.
What?
Yeah, G2, the number 1 seed. This is the different playoff bracket, and I'll explain it a little bit. They actually played 3 best of 5s this week. So we had G2 versus Mad, Fnatic versus Origin, so the same top 4, except instead of going down and playing like a Misfits versus Rogue, there's like the more I look at this, even though I don't necessarily like the fact that G2 effectively gets a bye in the losers bracket, I do kind of like the way they're dealing with losing and winning teams. Then Misfits and Rogue played, who are 5-6. So the winner of Misfits Rogue plays the lower seeded loser from the upper bracket.
Yeah.
So the matchups that are upcoming next week is Mad versus Fnatic in essentially a winners bracket final, then Origin versus Rogue, and the winner of Origin Rogue will then go through to play G2, who has effectively gotten a bye on the losers bracket. I know that's another one of those format things. The best visualization of this, in my opinion, is actually, I know there's been lolesports graphics, but it's pre-populated in Leaguepedia or Gamepedia. If you just go to the LEC or LCS pages, that's what I've been looking at right now to get this information. But the bigger conversation is, what the, like, WTF G2? How did you lose to Mad?
Yeah, that was, I admit, I watched the series on and off until the last game where I really got invested because part of me was like, G2 will win. These games are pretty messy. A lot of people were talking about the difference between online and offline play, scrims, the combined kills per minute. And, I think there's definitely some validity there. I think the biggest takeaway for me, well, I don't want to relate this right back to Team Liquid, but like G2 lost in a way that didn't actually make me feel that bad. They are always that team who finds this miracle way to beat you, and you're left staring at your screen being, how did we lose that game? And that's basically what that Ziggs backdoor was going to be if Caps didn't do some of the dumbest stuff you've ever seen.
The satcheling the Nexus to bounce away right into the waiting arms of an enemy, or even
taking the portal to be closer to the
there's so much in the moment. I mean, maybe just try, like, I feel like the portal, you can just be trying to hit the Nexus, and if someone throws a portal on the Nexus, you're gonna freaking go through it. But it's it was a mess up for sure in the moment. Getting to that moment of being able to kill the Nexus was good, right? There's G2 is... So I watched more of the series. I watched most of it. I think I missed a little bit of game 2 because I was doing an interview. But it did look like some of the conversation online said, like a scrim set. And I think knowing what I know about G2 and how their scrims are always fast and loose, and sometimes it's really hard to get them to focus down in a scrim, and also knowing how just ridiculously dominant they have been, they always have historically had the ability to turn it on when it matters. And because it's a double limb playoff, and because they don't have the fans right there, I think, and this is definitely giving G2 like a massive benefit of the doubt that we do not give to other teams. So I know that this is a double standard, but I'm just going to say that they're still just waiting to turn it on, and we will see a different G2 in round 3 of their playoffs when they play the winner of Origin Rogue. That's what I think.
So that's more benefit of doubt than I was giving them, because I guess my thoughts on it, there's 3 thoughts. One is, yes, everything you just said. 2 is, this is sometimes how dynasties end. When the Patriots lost, it was a helmet catch. It was some BS, and I'm still mad about it, you know? And like, that's sometimes how it goes. You know, it's not the enemy team hard displaying their superiority over you. It's a couple breaks don't go your way, and then next thing you know, you're out. And so like, that's, if this was a single bracket elimination, you know, like, this is often how some of the quote unquote best teams ever do end up losing. It's not like Team Liquid where they boom, or where another team comes and definitely supplants them. Sometimes you just lose. And G2 has been great about finding ways to win, like even the SKT series at Worlds last year, when every other team in the world maybe would have lost, but eventually, you know, you stop pulling rabbits out of your hat.
I will say that I believe it was Max, the EU League Ops guy, who made this format. He's probably pretty happy he made this format. Like, if I'm just thinking, like, in the eyes of an LEC being like, whew, thank goodness that wasn't an elimination game for our most popular team. Lions? I'm just saying that G2 is probably a bigger draw than Mad Lions. So it's like having Fnatic play against Mad Lions and have Fnatic waiting in the finals for an eventual G2 run through the lower bracket where they then get their first showdown against Fnatic. Like, damn, that's a good storyline, right? Like, being able to do that versus just like, well, G2 kind of played sloppy and they're gone.
There's one other element to this that we haven't touched on, which is the Caps 80 carry experiment.
Yes.
This is something that had come under criticism on and off throughout the year and came to a head definitely in this series.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are that they might have lowered their peak as a team by doing this. Because while I have had other conversations with Prawley, and I still kind of believe this, that having a mage-capable player down bottom is just an advantage, because there are actually champion combos, and the flexibility it gives you in draft to be able to threaten those things is a massive weapon. But what Perks became at the end of Summer Split, where he was actually a top 80 carry in the world who still had the mages in his back pocket, isn't something that looks like it's going to happen for Caps. And I mean, maybe it still could, but if I track how Perks looked around the halfway point as an AD versus how Caps looks now, I do think that Perks was better at that. So Caps on Mage's bottom lane is still actually really good, but I just don't feel that same threat of him being able to throw out anything, that when there is a mage pick, you're like, oh yeah, that's actually just their bot lane. And the same level of flexibility doesn't seem there to me.
Yeah, I think that was one of, like you're saying, the biggest strengths was that Perks ended up being great on all the meta 80 carries come important tournaments.
Yeah.
Caps is not looking like that right now.
And it could still happen, right? Like, this is, and they've even said that they are willing to swap back if this doesn't work. So I can imagine if they do not make a run here and they end up losing to the only other 3 teams they could lose to, like, Origin, Rogue, Fnatic, or Mad, like if they just don't win the finals, I'm not shocked if summer split they say Perkz back to ADC.
Question then.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You look like you had one more point.
Oh, yeah. So, and that's just kind of full circle. And maybe this is the question you're going to ask me, which is why I said that I think they may have lowered their peak as a team, because either they have Perkz taking a 6-month break from ADC, and theoretically that means when he comes back he's not as good, or they have Caps staying on ADC and not being able to reach the same peak that Perkz did last year.
Yeah, I was about to ask, do you think that it would have a long-term detriment? Because the argument could be made, not one that I really subscribe to too much, is that they would have some kind of lingering, if they never tried it, it would be like, oh no, what if this is better? Or what if I'm getting burnt out playing all these games and I feel like, Perkz is losing his mind just last hitting, because we've heard him joke about the 80 carry role before. So there is that angle to be like, oh, even if it doesn't work out this split, it still might have been better in the long run.
Yeah, like you're not going to have a successful career if you don't enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. And
if Perkz actually didn't enjoy playing ADC, then that's something that just like needed to be done. I mean, I know you don't play League as much as you used to, but did you ever try, like, were you a flex player, or were you a hard one role?
I was a bit of a flex. I bounced around. Jungle was my most played. I did play top on like select few annoying lane bully champs when they were OP, and then support whenever I do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of how I think it works when you're role swapping. From personal experience, is I'm a jungle main. So let's say I'm at D3 in the jungle, and I say, this season I want to play mid. So I put like 2 months into mid, and I basically feel like I'm peaking at plat 3. Like that's kind of, I make it up to there, and I start losing to the better mechanical mid laners in the meantime. When I swap back, I am not a D3 jungler, right? I swap back and I have to relearn and regrind on the jungle. Professional players are obviously in a league of their own, and this transition is faster. And with an infinite time frame, I feel like I am a better player for dumping 80 extra games into mid, because I've learned more about how those champions operate. But in these finite amount of time spaces where you're only going to have a couple months to try and get back to peak, yeah, there's an argument that this could end up just hurting G2.
Yeah, I think I'm also a bit in the perspective as well that if you are a player who is having motivation issues in your role, I don't know if looking at a role swap as a solution to a motivation, or, I don't know about motivation being the right word, but you know what I'm saying? Like
G2
you shouldn't look at it.
Yeah, G2 is kind of murky in their language, so we are by far speculating on this, but like Cap said that AD isn't fun. So let's let Perkz have a little bit more fun. I'll take it for the team. Is kind of what Cap said.
Yeah, and so like I guess my point is, like, if you're a player who's struggling with staying engaged or whatever, or like, I don't think a role swap is the long-term solution to finding enjoyment in the game, and maybe you need to find other ways of balancing out your life or whatever it is. But if it's just like hey, we thought this would be better and we want to try it, then that's also a totally valid reason. Yeah,
it definitely makes G2's next best of fives like pretty meaningful. I'm so mixed on these playoff formats. So just like full context, EU switched to a pseudo double elimination before NA did, and I really thought, just like from when I watched like the NFL or the NBA, I'm thinking having that best of 5 winners bracket final effectively not matter, because if they really are the 2 best teams, then we're going to see the best of 5 and it's not going to matter, and they're just going to play again in the finals. And the fact that we've seen it before is just going to de-hype the finals. Like, I kind of believe that. And then I saw last year, like, the Fnatic G2 best of 5, and like, oh man, they almost upset them. And then like they played again, and somehow it was actually just as hype. I'm like, what the? Yeah. Like, damn, like maybe this is actually better. So I don't know. I just wanted to give a shout out to that working. There's a counter to it, though.
Advocate a little bit is that was the ideal result. So your 2 most popular best teams playing a full super crazy best of 5 and then going and playing another one.
So this is going to be the other one though, because now we have
Right.
Mad versus Fnatic, and we're still going to theoretically get a G2 versus Fnatic final. Like, what's the downside?
I thought you were talking about North America. North America is the downside. C9, let's say hypothetically, slaps the hell out of EG, kicks him down in the losers bracket.
Yeah.
EG wins over TSM or whoever it is. And then they play again in winners, and C9 just slaps them around again for another 3-0.
Isn't that what happened in LEC Spring?
Maybe. Was it?
In 2019? I think it did, but it ended up like not... Yeah, because G2 slapped Origin 3-0. Then Origin beat Fnatic 3-1, and then G2 slapped him again 3-0.
I remember not caring about game 2 or game 3 of the grand finals was impossible. After watching them get dunked on for 4 games in a row, you're just like, I know how game 2 and game 3 is going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, okay, that's the other side. Right now, if I think about NA and let's say C9 claps EG 3-0, and then EG
game 1 happens.
Yeah, and then EG like actually just claps the other, like the third place match, where let's say they 3-0 TSM or something down there, and then they just get slammed by C9 again. We'll be like, well, I guess we kind of knew it was coming.
Yeah, it's just that's what but I guess you would probably be a little concerned about just C9 slapping anyways. Like,
yeah,
they just...
I think it's better, even with the high and the low. So I'm happy NA changed. And it's an interesting little tweak they have between EU and NA. I think I'm analyzing it more in depth for the first time, and I think a lot of the fans will as well. So if one actually does end up being better, I'm sure the leagues will be open to at least having a conversation about like copying each other's formats, because they do have that like slight difference in the way they handle losers bracket. Anyway, that's LEC, that's LCS. Do you have anything extra you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Or was this the tangent section? Or is
it can be. It doesn't have to be. We can just say goodbye. We've been in home isolation for like 3 weeks at this point.
Oh, okay. Well, here's what I'll give. And you've heard this before, actually. I mentioned like 2 or 3 episodes, whichever one I did with you, about my like video game content creator guy that I like watching, the reviewer.
Yeah.
And some people tried to guess it.
Every frame of picture, right?
No, that's the movie guy.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, I said I didn't want to shout this guy out because he hasn't put out any videos. He still hasn't. But then people were like, every frame of painting is closed and hasn't made one in 3 years. And I was like, okay, that's a good point. I'm stupid. I kind of consider that as like a complete collection, whereas this guy's still making them. So somehow I justified in my head.
Okay.
But really, I'm just an idiot. This guy, Matthewmatosis, is the one. Okay. I sent you something of his before, and I know you didn't watch it. So
I might have.
No, I don't think you did. He reviews games, but not the way you think of reviews, where you associate it with assigning a score or something. You know, like it's a 10 out of 10, and even people who are often reviewing it are saying you should or should not play this game, even if they're not using values. He is not really doing any of that. He's looking at games from a pretty technical level on both programming, game design, and all these things, and saying what they do right and wrong.
Wow. His Breath of the Wild review is 55 minutes long.
He is in-depth. He is the most in-depth reviewer I've ever seen. He's very dry. Like his earlier videos, he tried to be more funny, and then eventually he was like, why am I bothering to try and be funny? The people watching me are watching for my analytical ability. And like, he is a little pedantic, so you have to be able to stomach a little bit of that, but he usually is doing it. He's pedantic in both positive and negative ways. If a game does something really well in the small details, he'll make sure to shout that out. If they're really bad in the small details, he'll shout that out as well. He is like a monk in terms of his dedication. He has a Patreon. It's the only person I've ever subbed to on Patreon.
Damn.
But he does not see who his patrons are. So that way, if you tweet at him, he doesn't get influenced by your opinion. Like, he doesn't want to know who is financially supporting him. He doesn't accept any deals. He doesn't give a shit about monetization. He is like, I am here to review games, and I'm going to review them. And he's really popular, or pretty popular. His most popular videos have a couple million views.
Yeah.
And if you have a favorite game series of all time, he might have reviewed it. He's done Mario, Zelda, Metal Gear Solid, and you will learn more about those games. And he has a technical understanding when he's like, oh, they use bloom lighting here with this kind of shader texture to make this look really good. And
was he ever in the game design industry, or has he just done a ton of research and talked to a bunch of people?
I have no idea. He does insane research. Like most of his videos take years to make. Damn. And he's kind of working on all of them at different points in time. And he'll do research from the developers. So he'll say, he's not speculating like what they were thinking.
Yeah.
He'll be like, and he has such many, like so many good little nuggets. Like I was watching him talk about Super Mario 3D, like the first one that came out, or
Yep.
Mario 64, and he was talking about like it was the first 3D Mario game, and it was a platform, and they wanted it to feel good. So the first thing they did was they made a flat world and a bunny rabbit that ran around, and they tweaked Mario's movement until chasing a bunny rabbit was fun in and of itself. And once they had movement feeling fun, then they fleshed out level design and all these things. And so you learn a lot of really, really cool stuff watching him. And he is like, he will bring up things that I've never thought about in games, and does a really good job tackling them from all angles and stuff.
Damn.
Can't hype him enough.
Yeah, I mean, you sold the crap out of this guy. I'm going to watch... Okay, I haven't watched this guy. I don't think you sent him to me directly.
I know I did.
Yeah.
I looked at our Slack. You and I didn't talk on Slack for like 2 years or something.
Oh, no. So you
I was
had
gonna
the proof.
send you a message. I was about to send you a message, and I saw 2 years ago I sent you one of his videos.
Okay, my bad then. I'll watch something.
No, it's okay. It's just since people are in quarantine,
Yeah.
if you want hours and hours of game reviews to watch, here you go.
Speaking of hours and hours, have you watched Tiger King?
Yes.
Okay, I had some thoughts on Tiger King.
All right, hit me.
That I haven't talked to too many people about. Like, so, and this isn't necessarily a thought about like the characters or the ethics of, you know, the tiger captivity. I just thought about like, man, I don't think I could be a documentary filmmaker like this guy. Because I just started to think. So he says
Are you talking about the in, like the actual one, or the one that was getting interviewed, who was like the reality TV show guy?
So more the guy who actually made Netflix Tiger King.
Right,
so
okay.
Spoilers ahead. We're not talking about League on the rest of this podcast. If you haven't watched Tiger King now, like, thanks for watching JLXP, right? Please subscribe and listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and stuff. But for Tiger King, so there's the documentary filmmaker who had all his stuff burned. Not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the guy who actually made it, because I was just like thinking in my head, man, everyone he portrayed in this documentary probably hates him now. Like 95% of the people, some of the workers at like Joe's Tiger King farm are like they were portrayed relatively positively, but for the most part, like Joe, the woman, I forget her name, like
Carolyn or something.
Yeah. The, you know, tiger conservationist, and the guy who has the, you know, more successful tiger farm that they said got raided in 2019. Like everyone, it felt like, I'm thinking about how did he get these people to say this stuff on camera? And he must have been just like this charismatic friend who was like always around and just like bringing them into answers. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah. I got this, for some reason, I got this kind of uncomfortable feeling watching it. Like he knows what he's doing, and it's not like these people don't deserve to have these stories told in this way, but like he had to just be their friends for like 5 years, and in the back of his head think, I'm going to make this documentary that exposes everything. I don't know. It's weird. That's all I have.
Yeah, you're on some level. The Netflix crew must be somewhat manipulative. You're saying to be able to get all
something
this.
Like that. Yeah, and I just don't know if I could do that.
The other thing I'll say is that people rarely think, you know, they always think they're the victim. They rarely think they're the problem.
Yeah.
And so what you can, from my understanding, you can do when you're doing these when you're doing documentaries is you get the person's perspective on their situation, and they'll always paint the other person as the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then you interview the other person, and they paint that other person as the bad guy. We're the sane ones. They're the crazy ones. And then you don't really need to, you know, like you never ask them to say something negative about themselves, because the other person's the one with the dirt on them, and then they're the ones who are saying their side. So like, I wonder how much of it is just people spilling what they feel like their guts are to a camera, just because it's like probably somewhat cathartic to say all this.
It is. It's got to be. I mean, these people, it's their whole lives. Carol is the name of the woman, by the way. And Bhagavan is the guy from the Myrtle Beach Safari. I just IMDb'd it. Anyway, I don't know, man. It was this weird experience. And I kind of felt like I had to watch the show, weirdly, because Netflix said it was number one. I feel like I'm getting influenced by this. Like, hey, what's the popular show? Like, maybe I should check this out because everyone's going to be talking about it. But
I got to be honest. I think I got overhyped by social media. social media was acting like you've never seen anything like this. You're gonna go absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And like it was definitely crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good thing, and I'm glad I dumped 7 hours one random day into it. But I did not leave it feeling like absolutely blown away.
Yeah. The IMDb's got it at 7.9 out of 10. Seems right.
Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah, it's not a 9. It's just like
it was more like
good.
my timeline was just like
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it. That's all I got. I don't need to go any more in depth. I'm not a film critic. I just wanted to share because that's what we do here. Anyway, tune into the LCS on Tuesday and Wednesday. Mark, thanks for joining me. I'll check out the film critic you recommended.
And game critic. God, you're not even listening.
Oh my God. I was just trying to close it out all at once in a smooth way.
Get me out of here.
And I said the wrong word. Get Mark out of here. Get Jatt out of here. We'll see you guys next time.